What is going on, YouTube universe? This is ArghGodzirra. It is time again, ladies and gentlemen, to get our tips and predictions in for another round of AFL action. Round 4, just over 24 hours away. And if last week was anything to go off, we could be in for another roller coaster weekend. But before we get our tips in, before we reflect on the terrible tipping that I made last weekend, as you can see on screen, URL, comp code. You'll find those in the description down below. Go click on it. That's how you get access into my tipping competition. You've only got a couple of weeks left to do so while you're still eligible to win prizes. Once we get past that threshold, if you join, your eligibility becomes null and void. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure you get into that tipping competition in time. But that's enough of that for the time being. We need to reflect on the round that was round 3, the round that broke Godzirra's heart, ladies and gentlemen. We are loading it in right now. I don't know why it took us straight to round 4. I had it preloaded to round 3. See, this is why I preload things, so I don't look like an idiot on camera. But we kicked off on Thursday with the Bulldogs taking on Sydney. I tipped Sydney, and in the dying moments of the game, I thought that tip was going to get up. But then Bontempelli went and kicked that goal and broke my heart. The Bulldogs got up by 11 points in a very, very great contest. Friday night saw 2 games, the first of which was Melbourne taking on Essendon, and we correctly tipped that. And then we saw Jordan Dawson, after the siren from about 50 out, kick a ball that I thought was going to miss the goals completely, and it swung back better than David Beckham lining up for a penalty shot. I'm telling you right now, one of the best after the siren kicks I've ever seen. And Adelaide get up and win, leaving Port Adelaide 0-3. We tipped Gold Coast stupidly because GWS just dominated the game. They took their foot off the gas late, but in the early game, absolutely dominant. And tagging Tuke Miller was crucial to GWS getting that win. We then tipped Geelong over Collingwood, which I thought was going to be null and void because Collingwood had the game signed, still delivered, and then Geelong come out in the final quarter, kicked 9 unanswered goals to win the game. Brisbane defeating North Melbourne by over 100 points. I didn't think it would be that big of a win, but we still backed Brisbane in quite comfortably. Carlton defeating Hawthorn by 1 point. So glad Carlton fell over the line for me there, and Carlton continue their 3-0 start, just like Brisbane. Melbourne, Brisbane, Carlton, all undefeated after 3 rounds of football. We tipped Richmond, just like Collingwood, going into the final break, had a commanding lead at 1 point of almost 29 points. We went in only with a couple of points in hand, I believe, in the third quarter break, and then, just like Richmond did against Carlton, they conceded 7 goals in the final term, and St Kilda run away with the game. Broke my fucking heart, but my dad was ecstatic as a St Kilda supporter, I can tell you that. And then the final game, I actually thought for the longest part of that game that I had changed my tip to West Coast, and I'm so glad I didn't, because Fremantle came home for me incredibly strong. I only managed, however, 5 correct tips for the round. If we reflect on the comp, however, we only had 2 people correctly tip 8 for the weekend. And that was Sam H and Ian P, my brother from across the ocean over in England, managed to tip an 8 out of 9 round. Congratulations to you both for tipping the most correct tips for round 3. A lot tipped 7 as well. Matt Lamb, Craig, my old man, and Duncan tipping 7, and then a few with 6. I was well off my game. But now if we turn our attention to total tips, Courtney K and my father, the motherfuckers, Sean, are both sitting on 19, leading the competition. The door is well and truly open, though, because we've got some cripple, we've got Sean, we've got Craig, we've got Kirk, and we've got Shannon all on 18. And then we've got a few on 17, including myself. So I'm only 2 tips behind. I'm still holding on. Then we've got some 16s, Now, I don't know why this hasn't popped up. I think it's because maybe they've joined during the week, but Ben P is on 19 total as well, which means they're going to join Courtney and my dad up the top for that number 1 spot. So congratulations currently go to the 3 of you for holding the competition down on the top of the ladder. But now that we've gotten last week out of the way, it's time to focus on this week, round 4. And it should load in straight away for round 4 for me. Beautiful. Thursday night, tomorrow night, Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide taking on Melbourne. Port Adelaide are going to be 0-4. Very hard to come back from. I think 0-4, you can almost put a strike through any chance of climbing back into the top 4, I think. And we're going to go 28 points Melbourne's way. Melbourne have just been so good to watch, and even when they take their foot off the pedal, their stars stand tall. And we've got to think as well, they're doing this without some of their premiership defenders in the lineup. So once they get that defensive pressure back in, especially from Jake Lever, they're going to go to a whole new level. Friday night at GMHBA Stadium, Geelong is taking on Brisbane. Geelong actually going into this game as favourites. I'm actually tipping Brisbane, because Brisbane, to me, have been far superior compared to what we've seen from Geelong. The only reason I would see Geelong going in as favourites for this game is Oscar McInerney, Brisbane's number 1 ruckman, is out on suspension, which means Darcy Fort is going to have to carry the ruck work. But Brisbane's midfield, I rate more highly than Geelong's midfield. I think Brisbane's forwards can do a lot of damage against Geelong's defence. I think Brisbane's defence will stand up against the likes of Hawkins and Cameron up forward for Geelong. So I'm going to tip Brisbane. Could be to my own detriment, but we've got to go with our gut. Saturday afternoon kicks off at the SCG, with Sydney taking on North, and we're tipping Sydney. And I don't think it's going to be as big of a win as what Brisbane had, but I'm still thinking maybe 7 or 8 goals the way of Sydney. Even though Sydney lost last week, I think they take a lot out of that game. Very hard fought right until the end. North Melbourne, David Noble came out during the week saying that not only did their senior team lose by 100 points, but their reserves lost by 100 points as well. So collectively, North Melbourne lost last weekend by over 200 points. They've got a lot of reflecting to do, but they're in the midst of a rebuild. So we knew this was going to happen from North. I think Sydney win quite comfortably. I don't see an upset from North, unfortunately, especially not in Sydney. Marvel Stadium later on Saturday afternoon hosts Collingwood and West Coast. West Coast are due to get back a handful of players. I don't think Tim Kelly and Elliot Yeo are due to come back for maybe another week, but we're talking about Luke Shuey and some of those other players coming back in this week. Very interesting, because West Coast could come down with those extra players coming in and do a bit of damage. Taylor Adams will not be playing for Collingwood this weekend. Jordan De Goey will not be playing for Collingwood this weekend. So that's 2 midfielders out of that core group that have been doing a lot of damage early on this season, especially Taylor Adams with his clearance game. Jordan De Goey obviously having the ability to go forward and hit the scoreboard is going to hurt as well. The only reason I'd say Collingwood would be favourite is because they're down at Marvel. I'm really torn with this game. Not many people are giving West Coast a chance. I'm going to lock in Collingwood for now, but once I see the teams named, I could change, because it depends on who comes back for West Coast, but I feel West Coast could come down and get a win against Collingwood. Saturday night at the MCG, big game. Not just for Richmond, but for the Bulldogs as well, especially with how the ladder is currently situated. We've got the Bulldogs sitting in 12th. We have Richmond sitting in 11th. Both teams have started the year off with 1 win, 2 losses. This will take them to 2-2, which would be a hell of a lot better. Obviously, the Doggies are going in as big favourites here. They'll be without Zane Cordy, I believe. Richmond going to be without Dylan Grimes, but could welcome back Nick Vlosten, Dion Prestia, and Jack Rewalt. My head is telling me tip the Bulldogs, because the Bulldogs, as far as complete team structures go, on paper at least, have been the best team that we're coming up against all year. We got destroyed by Carlton's midfield, and I rate Bulldogs midfield higher, personally, on a more consistent basis, not just based off what we've seen this year, even because we know Carlton's midfield destroyed the Bulldogs midfield. But I feel if Richmond get Jack and Vlosten and Prestia back in, structurally, we go into this game a hell of a lot better than what we did last weekend against St Kilda, and we can beat the Bulldogs. If it was at Marvel Stadium, I would have already locked in the Bulldogs. We know Richmond don't like to travel. 15 minutes up the road. I'm going to back Richmond, because I feel Richmond's best can beat the Bulldogs, even though my head is screaming at me right now saying, you're an idiot, you just lost this tip. Hey, you know, if I lose this tip, I lose this tip. But I think Richmond can. I think Richmond can. You know what? I think they will. Saturday rounds out at Optus Stadium with Fremantle taking on GWS. Another close game for the weekend. Still no Nat Fyfe in that team as well is going to hurt. No Sean Darcy in the ruck could hurt. I'm going with GWS and an upset in Fremantle. I backed against GWS last week and paid the price. I think Braden Pruce in the ruck could have a big day, and without Sean Darcy there to put it down the throat of the Fremantle midfielders, I think players like Caniglio, Perryman, Tom Green, Josh Kelly, they could all have big days out, so I'm going to back GWS. Sunday at Marvel, Essendon taking on Adelaide. Adelaide due to get back the big Texan, Tex Walker. Essendon without their coach this weekend due to COVID protocols. I am going to tip Essendon here, but I could change, because I think, again, Adelaide could come out and upset, because that's the type of season we are currently seeing from Essendon. That's all that can be said, really. Moving on to the MCG, Sunday afternoon, Hawthorn taking on St Kilda, another coin flip game. I can really see Hawthorn doing some damage here, but after what I saw St Kilda do last week, I've got to back in St Kilda. I think their forward structure is going to be very hard to stop, especially if Max King can get off the chain. And I think St Kilda's back half can shut down Hawthorn's forward half pretty comfortably. And then Sunday rounds out with Gold Coast taking on Carlton, and we're locking in Carlton. And I hate to even think about the fact that Carlton could potentially be starting this season 4-0. But then a lot of people have been telling Carlton supporters online that, you know, it's going to be a downward spiral from here. I think you've got to pay credit where it's due, and they've started red hot. They're looking really good this year, and even if they do not make the top 4 and they still make the top 8, that is just still a huge improvement. They've already won more games this year than what they have in some seasons. We've only seen them win 2 or 3 games. So they've come out already and proven that what they are doing under Michael Voss is vastly better than what we've seen under anybody else in recent times. Recapping: Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, Collingwood, Richmond, GWS, Essendon, St Kilda and Carlton. Those are my tips. Put them in the bag. I will come back and adjust accordingly once teams are announced. But I'm pretty confident. I'm confident I can get at least 6 to 7 out of 9 this week. Fingers crossed. Hope you guys have been enjoying the footy being back. I am loving it. I know Ian over in England has even been catching some footy online too. So it's good to see that not only us Australians but people around the world are enjoying the game being back in full swing. It is so good. It just feels so good to see footy back, and with crowds in the stadiums, and I love football. I love football. Please leave a like on the video. It would support myself hugely if you did. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, especially if you want to be eligible for prizes. So make sure you get on it. And as I said, you've only got a couple of rounds left to go to get into this tipping competition while eligibility is still open. So get on it. Stop messing around. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.